Shalom and welcome again to Secrets of Meaning, the podcast, TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. Thank you very, very much for joining us today in what I hope will be a very, very powerful and enlightening and meaningful conversation for all of you. As usual, if you'd like to make a suggestion for the show or the podcast, please feel free to email me at Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com. Visit the website, jewishsacredaging.com, the Facebook page, all the usual social media outlets like LinkedIn. We appreciate you joining us and we appreciate your time. One of the most powerful journeys that many of us go through in this day and age is the journey of losing someone to Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive issues. We are very pleased to welcome a colleague of mine, Rabbi Deborah Hachen, to share with us her story and to reflect upon her husband Peter's passing, what it means, and some of the lessons that she's drawn for her own soul, which I'm sure some of you will find to be your story as well. So Debbie, it's very, very nice to see you. Full disclosure, we've known each other for a few years and
decades.
Let's not push it. Few years, a few decades. I
slept on the floor of your house once, I think.
You did?
Yeah. I'll tell you about it later.
Yeah, not right now.
Yeah, no. I was a rabbinic student. Okay.
A couple of months ago, for those of you who are regular followers of the podcast, we did an interview with my colleagues, Ben David and Lindsay Danziger on their book, The Sacred Struggle. And in preparing for that podcast, I came across this absolutely magnificent essay from the book called Discovering Holiness, a Jewish love story in the shadow of Alzheimer's that Debbie wrote, really reflecting upon her relationship with Peter and as he began and continued upon his journey. It's a magnificent essay, and it was because of reading that essay in preparation for the other podcasts that I reached out to Debbie and said, I really would love to have a conversation with you about this. There, in the beginning of this essay, there is this sentence. Listen carefully to the imagery. There's a drawer in my brain with 10 years worth of snapshots or sound bites of such moments. A phone call that he is lost in the rain on a street corner in Manhattan. A wastebasket thrown down the garbage chute with the trash. A critical document fed into the shredder instead of the copier. We saw none of that coming that night at the restaurant, but I must have sensed the possibility. That's a movie. Those two sentences are a film. What was that part of the journey like, Debbie?
That was the worst.
Really?
Well, I would say there were several stages that were difficult. I first want to say that I want to acknowledge for anyone listening that my journey with Peter was one of the easiest of anyone I know who has to go through 10 years of someone's dementia, right up to the end. And I know that because I've been in lots of support groups. So anyone who hears this who might say, oh, it doesn't reflect me. I had all these issues she didn't have. I want to acknowledge that from the very beginning because that often comes up. Peter didn't have hallucinations, really. He didn't have anger. He knew that he had Alzheimer's. So I need to say that right off, Richie, because it's really hard for people to hear this story and then think, oh, but she didn't have to deal with this or this. But I did deal with things. And some of those things are very common, as you said, to other people. Those were issues of his executive function, which is his ability to think and understand what was going on around him. He had social abilities, but it was so, so hard. I'm sure for him, because he didn't know what he was doing sometimes and felt bad afterwards. But it was hard for me because it was so unpredictable. I never knew what he could do and couldn't do. And as you read in the essay, I started keeping a list of all the weird things that happened. And I think all of us who go through this, we see this happen, whether it's that they repeat themselves, which he didn't have a problem with, or they get lost in an airport, or they come out the wrong door from the from a men's room with 2 doors, and you can't find them. And so what's he going to do next? And I think 2 things were hard about it. One is I loved him and I felt so bad for him that he couldn't do these things. But I also felt really bad for myself because I was on edge all the time. Am I going to come home and find something else broken or thrown away? And I eventually came to the place, but it took a long time, of focus on if he's safe and I'm safe, things don't matter. And tried to be proactive. It's really tough. All of us caregivers, we're trying to imagine what's going to go wrong. How can we protect against it? Can we get a bracelet for him to wear that's a medical alert? If he gets lost, somebody will know how to call me on the phone. Do we put a little extra doorbell on the door so when it opens, it plays, like in our case, take me out to the ball game? He thought that was funny if he ever opened the door so I would know if he was going out. But all that planning to try to find workarounds for everything, and that planning falls to the caregiver because that's exactly what the person with dementia can't do anymore. And they can't remember what you told them. So yes, that was really, really difficult, but support groups and reading about other people's experiences made the biggest difference at that stage.
You were serving a congregation, correct?
Yes. When he clearly developed this, I was in Jersey City, Temple Bethel. Great congregation, very understanding. They loved him.
So just talk to me about that transition when you write in the essay as well. There came to a point in time that you realized, I can't continue to serve this congregation and continue to take care of my husband. So therefore, what was that like?
So Richie, what I have to say is that Peter and I went through a Jewish marriage encounter decades ago, which was very, very important to us on our work on our marriage. And I also did a lot of work on Jewish meditation and some spirituality things. So we had already had lots of discussions in decades past about what it means to put each other first before anything else. And we had to make some life decisions like that, not terrible life-threatening ones, but like when I left my first congregation, which I helped to found, and moved down to New York City so he could take his dream job, that's because we put our marriage first and I put him first. And I told that congregation that when I left them. So this was about knowing that he was going to come first. And when he needed me full time, he was going to have me full time. Leading up to leaving the congregation, I had taken lots of time off in the previous 12 months with the congregation's permission, unpaid time and other things, to do things that were still on our bucket list while he could. So the congregation kind of knew this was coming. He started coming with me to everything at the synagogue. He couldn't be alone anymore in the 6-8 months before I actually retired. As I said in the essay, there just came the day where I knew that we had to move to be near one of my kids. And I asked his doctor, we were both there together. We asked the doctor, when should I move? How much longer can we sort of live in this kind of situation? And she said, you should move tomorrow so that he has time to adjust to a new place while he still understands things and likes people and can talk to them. And that night I called my temple president and we arranged my leaving within a few weeks. So I was very clear-headed about that. And also we were at an age where I could retire, financially, that I could do it. I mean, I wasn't really well off, but we had our pensions and things like that. So we looked forward to that. And the move was fun. And I had to do all the driving. We drove across country.
It's a tough drive.
And he loves to drive. And 90% of the time he remembered that he couldn't drive. Every once in a while he'd walk around to the driver's seat. But he pretty much remembered. And the big thing with Peter, I was very lucky. He trusted me completely. He knew I would always tell him the truth. He never suspected that I would say anything, mean to him. He was He got sad if I was frustrated. He wanted me to be okay. I was very, very lucky that he was socially aware.
No secrets, huh?
No, 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 no. And he wanted to try, different diets and medical things. And he spent a lot of time explaining to his friends what it was like. But I also knew when he was really uncomfortable, when he couldn't go into restaurants that were noisy. As we learned each thing, we readjusted. So we didn't go into noisy places. If somebody wanted to meet us for dinner, we often ate at home or we went to someplace quiet. And I knew if he needed to leave a place because he was confused, then we did it. And I just had to put him first. Very much like a parent who sees what their child at a restaurant can or can't do, or, how long they have energy, when they need to take a nap. He needed to nap quite a bit. You learn to do those things. And at the same time, you're learning a new way of life. You're mourning letting go of having a partner who's making all those decisions with you. So you still have a little bit of your partner who you love and talk about all the things that make you happy and enjoy eating and visiting and hanging with friends. But you also have the beginnings of a person who's dependent on you. And you're going back and forth all the time between those two.
As a colleague, was your faith ever tested? Did you ever have a moment where you just looked up and said, okay, God, what the?
No, but that's because I'd already worked through my faith issues such a long time ago. I had dealt with doing funerals for children who had died, seeing tragedy, reading, teaching about the Odyssey, the problem of evil in the world with a belief in God. So I personally was already at a place where I didn't believe in a God who decides each person's fate, who sends illness to a particular person. I'm a science-oriented person. Our bodies are imperfect. Our environment is imperfect. Things are going to happen to us. And unless it's willful on the part of a moral being who's trying to hurt someone, I don't attribute anything to God. I really just don't. I think God is the source of the kindness and goodness and love that we can draw upon and share with others to help them or let them help us. So I'm one of those lucky ones who didn't have that problem. But wow, that is a really big problem when people are still living with a God will help me if I pray, or this is a good person, why would it happen to them? But I had already read through all that literature and thought deeply about it and counseled other people about it. So that wasn't an issue for me. In fact, the synagogue was a really good place for both of us because we could sit together and do Shabbat together. I wasn't up on the bima anymore in the last months that he could physically be with me before COVID. So our Judaism was very good for both of us. And he was very, very involved in synagogue life and loved synagogues. He loved to stand in the back and hand out the prayer books.
No, I remember that.
Always. He's a greeter. He was a social greeter type. Richie, you knew him.
And again, it's a testimony to the power of community and the importance of community. What you write you alluded to the essay. COVID really was a major transition, wasn't
it? It was awful. It was awful. I think the year before, 2 years before COVID was the worst year. That was the year he was living with me here in California and getting to the point where I had to do so much for him that I was sleep deprived. That was the most exhausting time for me. But during COVID, I think that was the worst time for him. The little bits of real life that he had coming out with me to restaurants, even when he was in memory care, the year leading up to COVID. He was already in memory care, but he came with me to services and did things with me. I was there every day. Then COVID hit. I wasn't allowed to see him for a full year, not even through windows. Richie, I didn't see him at all. And he couldn't understand an image on an iPad. So when they could, because the staff was so overworked, they would take an iPad into him and call me on Zoom or FaceTime, whatever. I don't even remember what we used. Especially on every Friday, I would drop off a challah at his place. I didn't see him, but I could take things. I would drop off special milkshakes for him during that year. But he just didn't know what was going on. He was so confused, and he didn't have the social connections anymore. They were a wonderful memory care, but there were 2 people taking care of 14 people in his unit. I mean, how much attention can any of them get? And it was a real big mess. And by the time it was over, some of the things would have happened anyway. He was losing his balance, unable to walking into other rooms, not knowing where he was. It was just awful. Yeah, those things would have happened anyway, but I would have been there along the way to support him. I don't know if he got worse more quickly because of COVID. There's no way to know.
But the trauma on your own soul, being isolated for a year, not being able to see him, touch him, hold him, even have that conversation with him, or even do nothing but even just to share a cup of coffee, that must have ripped your soul out.
It was really, really bad. I threw myself into, we were trying to do high holidays at COVID, and I'm part of a community. I was part of a community that's sort of lay-led inside the senior community where I live. And so I took over those things. So I kept myself busy. But it was just awful. And it wasn't so much better when I actually could see him on there. I mean, I told him I loved him and hugged him. The people who took care of him were wonderful, and they loved him too. And it was very sad and very bad. And I just tried to separate the 2 things, the life I was living and there was no choice about it. I'm a practical person. I didn't have a choice. I had to adjust to this, and that's just what I did. Hard for my kids too. They couldn't see him either.
Right.
Yeah.
No. When we teach about caregiving in our work, we always say this is really a new life stage. And it's just not something, and it can, and you're a living witness to it. It changes, and it's a family systems issue. It's not just one person taking care of another person. And in many Alzheimer's dementia cases, it's something that can last not weeks or months, but years.
Right.
And who took care of you, Debbie?
Well, the support groups that I had been going to also closed down during COVID. So, but I'd already made connections with people. So we were checking in. I had all my colleagues and close friends from my whole life were taking care of me and checking in on me and talking to me. And when it wasn't COVID, they were visiting me and, visiting Peter too. So that network was fine. And my kids were taking care of me, and I could call them and talk to them. Luckily, I had one friend who I had made when I moved out here, was in the same support group. Our husbands were going through the same stages at the same time, and she was dealing with the same things with her husband in memory care. So we were checking in all the time. And when we could see each other with masks on, we were getting together and comparing things. So I kind of had a buddy. And the only reason I was able to have that buddy is because I put the time in to be in a support group before that. And Peter and I had been in support groups even when we were in New Jersey, New York area, when he first, in the early part of his disease. I think that was really important. And then before he went into memory care, even though I was brand new, the people here were always reaching out. Someone who did hospice counseling, who was in the little congregation here, offered to come and sit with him for 2 hours so I could get out every once in a while during the time before he went to memory care. So my support was, going on Zoom services every Friday night and talking to people and cooking and staying connected to my friends. It was easy to get support during COVID because people had plenty of time to talk and be on the phone, you know? So that was actually easy.
Yeah. Talk to me about the poetry.
So when I was first asked to write the essay about caregiving, not about Peter's journey, but about my journey, I was really overwhelmed. I mean, what do you say about 10 years of going through something, plus all the years before that? You want to like have people know who he is, but it's not really about him. It's about you, and about the journey. So I spoke to one of my friends, to Joni Friedman, one of our colleagues, and I was telling her I was having a really hard time writing the essay. And I said, if they just asked me to write a poem, I probably could have done it. And she said, why don't you just write poems then? See what happens. Just stop, trying to write the essay. And I just sat down, took a few of my favorite, most poignant pieces from the Torah and used them to write some poems. I had written one poem years before during a seminar that Sue Levy-Elwell had run for the rabbis in my area. And I had written a poem like in 25 minutes. I usually write my poems just off the top, not the top of my head, but the top of my spirit, when the spirit moves me. But I sat down to write these other ones, and it really helped. It got out it was the first kind of cathartic work I did. He was still alive, but he was non-communicative, bedridden, and all of that while I was writing the essay, not able to really be there. And so I wrote these pieces to jumpstart my writing of the essay. And I really loved them. And of course, they couldn't print them with the essay. It's a limited space. The essay it had a word limit, but poetry doesn't. You can write what you need to write. And then I submitted them to the CCR Journal and they printed them all. And those poems really, I wanted to convey how much I loved him and how much he was still there. I wanted people, they always say you never know how much they hear, even people who don't have dementia, when they can't communicate, what they say all the time, still sing to them, talk to them at the end, all of that. So I just always with him imagined his neshama, his soul was still there, and that maybe he could perceive, if not my words when I talked to him or when I sang to him, or that he knew it was me. I believed that just sending out my love and the aura of that was what he needed. And that's what I wanted to convey in a couple of the poems. And then one of the poems was sort of a technical poem that I wrote very carefully about slowly losing someone little by little until suddenly they're gone. But the other two were the ones. I just wanted to say that it's kind of a miracle. Those little moments you sometimes hear about with people with dementia where they suddenly wake up and look at you or talk to you. He never woke up and talked to me, but he sometimes would look at me and suddenly his eyes would be alert. And I knew that he knew me. And I lived for those moments. I didn't expect them. I didn't force them. But when they came, they meant a lot.
Do you have a favorite poem that you want to share?
Well, I just want to say I wrote one that was about wrestling with angels and about, based on Jacob, wrestling with the angel and limping away. And though I told you originally maybe the Moses burning bush one, I might, read that one. I think the wrestling one, now that he's passed away, maybe is more poignant. So I have a Moses burning bush one where the bush burns unconsumed. And that's an image I want your listeners to think about, that the person's brain is on fire and burning, but they're not consumed. They're still there and you hold them. But I want to read the one about wrestling. Is that all right?
No. Please, no, sure.
Okay. So the quote it's based on is Genesis 32:25. This is titled Wrestling with My Beloved's Dementia. And the quote is, Jacob was left alone and a figure wrestled with him until the break of dawn. And this is the poem. It found me dipping my toes in the river. No, I'm not ready, I pleaded, too soon. It laughed and bared its teeth. Ready or not, here I come, and grabbed me. I held on and on and on. It grew stronger. I grew more determined. When dawn broke, it loosened its grip. We sank down by the river's bank. Exhausted, we tossed pebbles into the water, debated life and death, agreed to disagree. You took too much, I complained. At least give me a blessing. It rose to leave, then sighed, turned back, handed me a bouquet of memories. Cradling it in shaky hands, I rose too and limped away. And for your readers who don't know the whole context of the story, it has Jacob was by the river when he wrestled with this angel, which was really himself. And he limped away from being touched by the angel. And when I wrote this, that's something I wanted to get across. That yes, we limp, like Jacob limped the rest of his life. We caregivers, it takes something out of us. It hurts. But we're still walking. We're still moving. We limp away. And the gift of knowing that we did what we could, as much as we could, we have regrets, all of us. Did they go into care too soon? Was I patient enough? All those different things. But we have a bouquet of memories, and that's, especially now that he's been gone for a few months, those memories, as so often happens, as you and I know, when someone passes away, the memories begin to rush back, all the good ones. And you can hold on to those bouquets of memories. They get better and better. And that's what I have now.
It's a great image. It's a beautiful image, the bouquet of memories. And even the wound, that Jacob, and with the name change in that story, that's the wound is the grief, isn't it? It's the grief that you carry with you, because it never goes away. It just finds
losing your love your love and your partner. If you've had a good relationship, I always say to people, many people don't, and they have a very different journey and a different struggle taking care of someone that they don't really have such a deep love connection with. But for me, if it's kind of like a piece is torn out of you, but it's not violently torn. It just slowly, it's kind of like just fading away. And there's a piece of you that's just drifting, drifting away. But the echo of it is there if you love someone. It's always, and that's true for, any kind of death. Once you can get back to that and spend your time thinking about what you shared. I don't think I really responded exactly to what you said, Richie.
No. On the contrary. I mean, Peter died in June.
In June.
So things are still raw.
People say that, but I don't think they are.
I
don't think they are. I had such a long time to deal with this. Such a long time to practice and think about being on my own and being without him, and sift through memories and tell him stories to remember things. I had already lost most of him.
You do write about Pauline Boss's anticipatory grief and the myth of closure, which was a very, very, she actually did a podcast for us many years ago. It's a great book. And it's, I remember when my mom crashed, I call it crash, with dementia, was very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was seeing this guy, my therapist, and said, how come I don't, and then after she died, I said, how come I don't, I've done this for years and years with other people. Why aren't I? And he said, because you started sitting Shiva 6 to 8 months ago.
Right. And I had done that slowly over 10 years. We knew what was coming after the first couple of years. And the 3 previous years, when he was like really just being fed and changed, lying in a bed at a little home near me. He was, most of him was gone. I had plenty of time to grieve. And I know the difference between different kinds of grief. I mean, from watching congregates.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a friend who a year ago, his wife just dropped dead on the kitchen floor right after she picked up her cup of coffee. So you're not prepared for any of those. I was prepared as much as anybody can be prepared. I don't think anybody was ever more prepared than me. I know that sounds strange, but I think my rabbinic experience and the people who helped me in support groups and everything else, and my faith, and Peter himself, his acceptance, all helped me. I just want to add, because I know we're getting to the end of our time, that when it was time for Peter to go to memory care, because I was sleep deprived, I was really starting to be crazy. I mean, I couldn't think. My mind wasn't working properly.
Yeah, caregiver burnout is a legitimate diagnosis, believe me.
Right. So I was having burnout, and I knew it, and I couldn't get sleep at night. I was up with him all night long because he didn't know when he had to go to the bathroom, and it was complicated. And I said to him, look, I think it's time for you to go. And he said, whatever you need, Debbie, that's what we're going to do. And he went there. He moved in, and usually they say, don't visit for 2 weeks. And they called me after 1 week and said, he's terrific. Come see him anytime. And I came and I took him in and out all the time. And he would direct me when we drove back. He would say, turn here, go here. He would walk in and greet everybody like he was the social director at the front desk. And his attitude was, I have 2 homes. So I had the best possible experience because of his personality and because of the particular way the Alzheimer's affected his brain. Not everybody gets that gift.
No.
Yeah.
And he was blessed to have you.
Thank
he really
you.
was.
Thank you.
It's true. It's true. Rabbi Deborah Hachen, thank you very much for sharing part of your journey with us. Please, and just stay safe and stay healthy. And
you too.
I'll see you at some convention probably along the way. Debbie, thank you very, very much.
Thank you to everybody who's listening. Go out and get support.
And Peter, if you're listening in some other plane of reality, you should be very proud of your wife. She, as we say here in New Jersey, she did good.
Thanks, Richie. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. To all of you, thank you very, very much for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. If you'd like to support our work, please go to the website. There's a conveniently located donate button. We appreciate that very much. For any of you who would like to sponsor your organization, some of these podcasts, again, just email me at Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com. We'll take it from there. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the Broadcast Center of Lubetkin Media Companies in the absolutely perfect bucolic place called Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And a big shout out to Steve Lubetkin, our producer. Thank you very, very much for your time. We do appreciate you joining us. Keep in touch. And until we see each other again, stay safe, everyone. Stay healthy. And most of all, be kind to one another. Shalom.